Hello, I'm Todd Phillips, the editor of Canadian Auto Dealer. We're here today with Chris Piche. He's the co-founder and the CEO of Smart AI. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
I'm interested to have this chat because you reached out. Your company produces a lot of products in the AI space, but there's a piece of legislation recently in California that is really involving autonomous driving, and you had some concerns around the way policymakers are starting to view AI, and particularly around the transportation space. So that intersects with our interest, that is mobility and all the products and services that dealers can offer to their public. So tell us a bit about the background, first about your company, but then we'll dive in and talk about the laws in California.
Okay, so I'm the founder of Smarter AI. Smarter AI is a software platform for AI cameras. In the same way that we have Android and iOS for smartphones, we have Smarter AI as a software platform for cameras. AI cameras obviously are and can be deployed in many different markets and many different use cases. At Smarter AI, we've chosen initially to focus on the transportation market because we think that represents the highest uptake market and the biggest opportunity in the short term. So we're providing both AI vehicle cameras and computer vision solutions, primarily for commercial transportation, and including commercial transportation in California, which leads us to this California Assembly Bill 316.
Thanks for being very precise. So, Assembly Bill 316. Tell us a bit about that and you really, what it's covering and really maybe your concerns around it and what it means for the larger industry. So,
Right. So it's a piece of pending legislation in California, which would require autonomous trucks, any autonomous trucks on the roads in California, to have a human, I guess, chaperone, for lack of a better word, a human attendant in the autonomous truck at all times. And obviously, the concern about this is the potential to add cost and slow the rate of development and adoption of autonomous transportation technologies. I think we all know, and certainly most of the people watching and listening today will know that when it comes to AI, when it comes to computer vision, the quality of the AI or computer vision models is based primarily on the quality and the amount of data that's used to train those models. And most people will be familiar with Tesla Autopilot, Tesla Full Self-Driving, and of course, those are some of, if not the most advanced autonomous technologies today, in large part because they've Tesla has done a good job of getting those technologies deployed and using them to gather data, which they can then feed back into the training and testing of new models.
So in terms of this legislation out there, what were some of the driving reasons behind it? Was it safety concerns? Is there sort of alarmed a sense of we don't want vehicles autonomous, and obviously the trucking industry is different in terms of its role versus driving on the public streets and stuff. I mean, there's different controls, but tell us about what some of the, if you will, the chatter or the stuff that was driving the politicians to take this all the way to creating new legislation.
Yeah, I think obviously they're well intentioned, and from their point of view, the politicians are trying to get ahead of potential problems before they happen. And obviously pass some legislation to to prevent or mitigate any problems that might happen. I think from the point of view, though, of the technology companies, they're really just legislating against problems that are more imagined than real. All of the statistics that we have about autonomous transportation, whether that's in passenger vehicles or whether that's in trucks or other commercial vehicles. All the data that we have suggests that even the current autonomous driving technologies are several times safer than than human drivers. So I think from our point of view as technology companies, we're scratching our heads trying to find exactly what is the problem that they're trying to get ahead of.
And you hit on something there that's really of interest to me is this sort of the broader sense of there's this new technology of AI coming. It's coming into, let's call it mobility or transportation services in new and unimagined ways. There's a lot of progress being made, but sometimes the public sentiment, there'll be a couple of high profile incidents of, an autonomous vehicle causing damage or stuff. And also now public sentiment starts to shift and people get quite fearful or, of the new technologies. So, as someone who is on the technology side and the analytics side, maybe if you could maybe just speak to that about maybe the reason for interviews like this and such, or to try to maybe, intervene in that public debate before, myths become realities in people's minds, right?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's a real double standard. And going back, I don't know, at least 5 or 6 years ago, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, for the last 5 or 6 years, every year, it's like clockwork, has famously proclaimed that this is going to be the year that Tesla, widely deploys autonomous driving technology. And if I recall correctly, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, he promised that by the end of that year, Tesla would drive from New York to Los Angeles or Los Angeles to New York without any human intervention. And of course, we all know that hasn't happened. I think most people would just look at that as, from a cynical point of view, as a typical CEO, over promising and under delivering. I actually have a bit of a different perspective on that. My perspective is that he failed to understand the double standard, and he failed to understand the public's acceptance criteria. He misunderstood the acceptance criteria for autonomous transportation technology. He thought 5 or 6 years ago that if he could deploy an autonomous transportation technology, autonomous driving technology, that would be equally safe or maybe a little bit safer than a human driver, that, why wouldn't this be acceptable? It's got all the other advantages of autonomy, and it's at least as safe, if not a little safer than human drivers. But of course, as you've pointed out, there's a double standard. Humans cause accidents, all day, every day of the week. A lot of those accidents are caused by extraordinary negligence, texting and driving and what have you. And but there's so many of those accidents that they don't show up on the front page of the paper. They don't show up on the morning news or the evening news, and we just sort of accept those as a fact of life. But if there's even one collision, involving a Tesla or involving some other autonomous vehicle, of course that becomes front page news. And so, in my opinion, Elon did not overestimate his ability to develop and deliver the technology. He just grossly underestimated the public's acceptance criteria. The acceptance criteria is actually zero collisions or close to zero collisions. It is not simply, to be a little bit better than a human driver.
The other thing that's interesting in this debate is that it's an interesting perspective you have is, let's just talk about the economic advantages on the supply chain for companies or countries, say, that can have autonomous transport systems moving stuff around, and another value, even in terms of the personal space, there's a big constituents, whether it's seniors or people that have limited mobility or eyesight, whatever, that really don't access transportation like, like the rest of us are lucky to be able to do. So the autonomous driving or technology has a lot of promise. I mean, initially, maybe out of the gate, it might have been sort of overhyped, let's just say, but I mean, there's all kinds of economic advantages too. We look at the cost of inflation and the supply chain costs now kind of going through the roof. And some of this technology properly harnessed really does have some economic advantages to companies and countries. I mean, speak a bit to that.
Economic advantages and let's say quality of life advantages. So, for example, one partner that my company Smarter AI works with is developing autonomous buses. And through this partnership, I've learned that when it comes to operating regional transit, typical buses that they have in Toronto and Markham and pretty much every other city in North America, by far the biggest cost of operating those buses is the cost of the driver. And so if we're able to replace the drivers in those buses, it becomes possible, instead of having buses that come within 10 or 12 or 16 blocks of your house or my house, it becomes possible to deploy a larger number of smaller, more synchronized buses, and come right up to my doorstep or within 1 or 2 blocks of my doorstep. So there are both financial and let's say public interest benefits to the technology.
In raising your concerns about the California debate and contributing to this overall, it's interesting because you live and breathe the space. I'm sure you have technology conversations about this at cocktail parties because everyone wants to know more about AI. But do you find, as the technology is ramping ahead, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, that if you will, public fear, resistance to technology is also accelerating? I'm not going to call it the conspiracy theorist view of everything, but it seems like there's for every action there's an equal an opposite reaction as well in the other direction. Are you finding that, if you will, AI fever, hysteria, fear growing as the technology gains a hold more with Chat GPT and these other features?
I think that's right. That is my general sense. But I'll also say that in my little part of AI, being AI cameras and transportation technology, I really think that we, as the technology innovators and the government as the regulators, I think we've done an abysmal job of communicating the benefits of this technology to to the members of the public who ultimately we all serve. And along with smartphones and smart cars and all the other smart devices that we all seem to have these days, the level of complacent and distracted driving has risen to just, in my opinion, frightening levels. Personally, I would like to see autonomous driving technologies deployed as quickly as possible, if for no other reason than the rise of to fight the rise of complacent and distracted driving. From the point of view of a technology developer, as you said, on a day-to-day basis, we're so we're so focused on what we're doing and solving all of these technology problems that are facing us, and perhaps not focused enough on properly communicating the actual problems that we're solving and the benefits of our technologies.
Well, maybe we'll stop it there. It's a good place to end our chat, and I think maybe as part of this interview, maybe this can help contribute to that debate and get people thinking that obviously every technology needs to be assessed, and both the risks and the benefits, I think, and it's interesting to see in the transportation space. Those are discussions that are ahead of us. a few years remaining, but it'd be very interesting to see how the debate shapes up in the years to come. So thanks for taking the time to shed some light on this for us today, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Todd. It's my pleasure.